Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are taking a look at the Adidas jersey sponsorship coming to an end at the end of next season. Adidas announced the other day that they are not renewing their contract with the National Hockey League. Adidas will not return as the NHL's official supplier of uniforms and apparel when their contract expires after the 2023-2024 NHL season. They informed the league that they will not be interested in continuing their partnership. So some pretty big news here. This is kind of interesting. And what's kind of been a jersey renaissance here under the Adidas situation seems to be coming to a quick halt. It really wasn't that long ago that Adidas had come into the NHL, and it seems like they're backing out pretty quick here. So we're going to go over the jersey history of manufacturers and stuff like that. So prior to 2000, they had multiple contracts with many manufacturers, as you guys remember, with CCM, Koho, Nike, Starter, and Pro Player. They had plenty of different companies throughout the National Hockey League in their manufacturing. Now, from 2000 to 2007, things got a little bit interesting. So they were made by the hockey company in an NHL-wide deal. So basically, Koho was in charge of all the home uniforms, and CCM was in charge of all the white road uniforms. So kind of interesting to see how there were different brands for home and away jerseys. But we've kind of never seen anything like that happen, since then. But then in 2007, as everybody remembers, the infamous Reebok Edge, as Reebok kind of redeveloped a lot of the team's jerseys. They had those weird, cross stripes going down, and they didn't look that great, right? And at the time, they were trying to be creative and more festive, and some teams like the Washington Capitals, one of the very few teams to actually keep that Reebok Edge brand. That just shows you how dire need they need of an update. That's still one of the only teams that has that Reebok Edge design. Now that lasted for 10 years, from 2007 up until 2017, and that's where we saw as they broke away from Reebok, and people were very upset about that because they weren't sure what the future of Adidas would be. And I cannot believe that this was 5 years ago. But Adidas and AdiZERO, whatever you want to call that, in 2017, the NHL was moving to Adidas branded jerseys and merchandise. And that's where a lot of people were quite nervous at the time. If you guys remember, there was a lot of debate about how Adidas was going to try and make money off the NHL, right? And people were upset with Reebok. There was their things. They had that weird tag in the bottom of the Reebok jerseys, and it didn't look that great. But everybody was nervous what Adidas would do. Adidas's claim to fame, if you want to call it that, was the collar. The neck collar was their way of innovating the jersey. And a lot of people were not a fan of it. So if you look at the jersey, most jerseys around the league, especially look in those 2000, 2007 era, even the Reebok Edge era, this is where the criticism starts. Reebok Edge started putting this weird, they had like a second layer of fabric under the jersey, and it had the NHL logo. You guys know what I'm talking about if you know anything about jerseys. And they had the laces, but the laces were completely useless. You couldn't pull away the cleavage or anything. It was just, or your chest hair. It didn't do anything. There was nothing to cover up because there was fabric behind the lacing. So the lacing was kind of pointless even on the Reebok Edge jerseys. But then we get the Adidas jerseys, and it just completely made it look way worse. And if you look at some of the lacing on those new Adidas Zero jerseys, it looks really bad. And it's to the point where it's like, just get rid of them. Like, they look awful. Some of them are like fake looking laces, like the Minnesota Wild's new design. It's just like 3 laces across, and it just pointless at that rate. So a lot of people criticize that, including myself. And that was really their claim to fame. And the new thing that Adidas has been doing is kind of fixing things like we're going to see on these reverse retros. And that's one of the things I'll miss about Adidas. And we'll get to that in a second. but they really tried to make less stuff on the jersey. So they had the little Adidas button as a in the around the hem, in order to keep really people online from pirating the jersey. Right, it's a lot more difficult to make that fabric or design that they use on those jerseys. They also started to do things with the back, which we're seeing in these reverse retros coming up. They've got the Adidas, and trying to make it a cleaner look and more simple. But obviously the most famous, not infamous, some would call it infamous, I would say famous things that Adidas did was their renaissance of jersey design. Some of those third jerseys that have been created through the Adidas program has been incredible. Look at the redesigns of the Carolina Hurricanes, the Calgary Flames, going back to their 80s, 90s look, really clean jerseys there. And of course, the reverse retros. People are a huge fan of those reverse retro and the reverse retro series, which we saw 3 seasons into the Adidas Zero partnership. So in 2020, during the bubble and all of that stuff and COVID and everything else, the NHL wanted to make income in a means other than, because they couldn't sell tickets, right? There was empty buildings for games up in Toronto or Edmonton during the bubble, and even a little bit after that, especially in Canada. So how is the NHL going to recoup some of that money? Through jerseys, and specifically the reverse retro series, the first version of that, and it was incredible. They brought in some incredible classic jerseys in new designs. Some other teams throwing out the jerseys that we've always wanted to see either return or be made just as an original design. They did so well with that, and some teams really hit it out of the park. Some did not. Talking to you, Detroit and the Red Wings. But other than that, a lot of people were a huge fan of that. It was a whopping success. And then we're seeing that design come back here for the 2022-23 NHL season just 2 or 3 years later, which I think is a huge win for the NHL. So with that said, what is the future? Because now that Adidas is leaving their kind of mark, well, what's next? Because now you're looking at a situation where does the NHL go a completely new path, right? We saw them do that with Adidas. We saw them do that with Reebok in 2007. So the 2 most recent manufacturers have been new partnerships and not going back to ones that they've known. Or do they start to go back to the hockey brands, right? Do they go to CCM or Bauer, or I guess even you could say Under Armour or Nike or Starter? The NHL's had a long history of different jersey designs. Now, here's what I am going to go with. Unfortunately, I don't think the NHL is going to go back to, say, a Bauer or a CCM. As much as I'd love to see that, and I look at AHL jerseys, and they are CCM branded, and they're beautiful. Beautiful looking jerseys in the American Hockey League, and they're CCM. So CCM has been able to adapt and done a very nice job with their modern looks with the American Hockey League. So the question is, who takes over next? Now, again, pure assumption. We don't really have many details on that, and of course, stay up to date by subscribing to. I'll let you know, of course, when we find out. But considering it's still 2 years away, we probably won't know for a little bit. Maybe by the end of the year, or maybe the beginning of 2023, we'll get some more confirmation and maybe an official statement. But I think the NHL is going to go with one of these 2 brands. One is Nike. And I hate this idea because we've seen the Olympic jerseys, and I am not a fan of them. I don't own any Olympic jerseys. I'm not a fan of that Nike design. So, begrudgingly, I say Nike. That's one. Politics aside, but that's also a factor personally. But I'm not talking about that. So Nike and Under Armour. I think Under Armour is the one that is going to be the most interesting because they have kind of delved into jerseys before, but never in the NHL landscape. So I think that would be a really interesting one, as that's new blood on the block, and that would fit the theme of the NHL, going with Reebok and going with Adidas, going with new partnerships. They've already worked with Nike. They've worked with Starter. They've worked with Koho. The thing is with like Koho, Bauer, and CCM, I just don't know how long, stability-wise, they're going to hold up. And I just don't know if the NHL is going to bark back at that door. As great as that would be going back to the roots, I just don't think the NHL is going to do that. I do think they're going to go with a Nike or an Under Armour. If I had to, go into my head, Under Armour or Nike, I'm probably going to go with Nike. And I hate saying that because I'd rather Under Armour, but I do think there is a legitimate chance it ends up being Nike. Nike already owns a huge amount of jerseys in the industry. And unfortunately, I think the NHL could be next on that list, as they kind of have sort of monopolized that. And I think that the NHL will be the next in line for that. So for better or for worse, the NHL is probably destined for Nike. But I do think there is still a chance, if there's enough of a bidding war for Under Armour, I do think that they could sneak in there and kind of keep the monopoly from coming into Nike. But let me know what you guys think down below. What would you like to see as the next manufacturer of the NHL? Let me rephrase that. What would I like to see? I'd like to see CCM. What's really going to happen here? Is it going to be Nike, Under Armour, or CCM? Those are going to be my top 3 picks, but let me know what you guys think down below. What do you guys think? Like I said, this sponsorship will last for this season, for the 2022-23 season, and the 2023-24 NHL season. So we still have 2 full seasons left of Adidas, but that's going to quickly change. As you guys remember how quickly things changed when Adidas came into the game back in 2017. And what do you think's next for the NHL jerseys in terms of their designs in the future? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. And of course, I'll see you guys again next time. Peace.